Most people think the difference between lab-grown meat and real meat is simple. One comes from a farm, the other from a lab. One feels natural, the other feels futuristic. But the real story goes much deeper than that, into biology, history, culture, and our complicated relationship with food itself. Have you ever wondered what actually separates a steak grown inside an animal from one grown inside a stainless steel tank? And why, even though they may look almost identical on a plate, their stories couldn't be more different? For most of us, meat has always felt like something straightforward. It comes from an animal, raised somewhere far away, transformed behind closed doors, and eventually wrapped neatly in plastic or served at a restaurant. We rarely think about its journey. And when lab-grown meat, also called cultured or cultivated meat, entered the conversation, it sounded like science fiction trying to copy something timeless. People imagined artificial flavors, synthetic textures, something engineered instead of raised. Yet the confusion doesn't come from misunderstanding science. It comes from how deeply emotional food is, and how closely meat is tied to our traditions, our memories, and our sense of what real means. To understand the difference, you have to go back to where the story of meat truly begins. Not in a laboratory, and not even in agriculture, but in the long stretch of human history where hunting was survival. Meat wasn't just food. It was status, risk, celebration, danger, and reward, all at once. Every piece represented effort and story. When humans learned to domesticate animals, meat slowly shifted from a rare occasion to something predictable. Farms replaced forests. Herding replaced hunting. Over time, it became an industry. Barns turned into feedlots, fields into supply chains. The journey became more efficient, but also less visible. Meanwhile, another story was forming, not in fields, but in research labs. Decades ago, scientists studying cells noticed something curious. Muscle cells, when given the right nutrients, didn't just survive outside the body. They continued to grow. At first, this discovery wasn't about food. It was about medicine, healing, and understanding the body itself. But buried inside that research was a question no one had fully explored yet. If a muscle cell can grow on its own, could we grow edible meat without an animal? The idea lingered quietly for years, until technology finally caught up with imagination. Biologists, food scientists, and engineers started to collaborate. They weren't trying to invent fake meat, they were trying to grow the same tissue, the same biology, just taken on a different journey. Instead of forming inside a living animal, the cells would grow in a warm, nutrient-rich environment designed to mimic what nature already does. Where a cow uses blood, oxygen, and metabolism to build muscle, a bioreactor uses carefully controlled temperature, nutrients, and support structures. The process is different, but the material being grown, at its most fundamental level, is still muscle tissue. Real meat, the kind that comes from animals, grows as part of a living body. It's shaped by movement, diet, stress, genetics, and environment. Every fiber forms through millions of tiny biological signals. When the animal lives, that tissue has purpose. It helps the body move, stand, breathe, and survive. Its flavor and texture come from fat layers, connective tissue, age, and activity. Each animal produces meat that carries its own subtle variations, giving different regions of the world distinct culinary identities. Lab-grown meat begins from a very small starting point. A sample of cells is taken from an animal, often through a harmless biopsy, and placed into a nutrient bath that feeds and multiplies them. These cells don't know they're in a lab. To them, the environment simply feels like a place to grow. They divide, expand, and form strands of muscle. Sometimes they're placed on scaffolds that guide their shape, helping them develop structure. Over time, those strands begin to resemble what nature creates inside an animal. They don't come with bones or organs, or the broader biological complexity of a living being. They are only what we eventually eat. In a way, both forms of meat tell the story of growth, one through biology inside a body, the other through biology replicated outside of it. But here's where the difference widens, and where many misconceptions begin. People often imagine lab-grown meat as something artificial, chemically fabricated, or engineered like plastic. In reality, it isn't assembled from substitute ingredients. It is grown from real animal cells. The lab part describes its environment, not its composition. The unfamiliar setting makes it feel foreign, even though the material itself is biologically familiar. On the other hand, real meat isn't just tissue. It carries with it the entire life of the animal it came from, what it ate, where it lived, how it was raised. There is heritage in livestock farming, traditions passed across generations, communities built around ranching and agriculture. For many cultures, animals are not only food sources, but symbols of identity and connection to land. To them, lab-grown alternatives can feel like a separation from history, a shift away from something deeply human and deeply rooted. Yet the rise of cultivated meat didn't come from a desire to erase tradition. It emerged from questions about the impact of modern meat production at an industrial scale. As populations grew, so did demand. Farms expanded. Land, water, feed, transportation, and processing all became part of a vast global network. The system feeds billions, but it also comes with environmental costs, ethical debates, and health concerns about overconsumption. Cultured meat was proposed not as a replacement for all meat, but as an experiment in whether the story of meat could take a different path. In a cultivated environment, a single cell sample can grow into large volumes of edible tissue without raising or slaughtering an entire animal. Supporters see it as a technological attempt to reduce resource use and animal suffering. Critics see it as a detachment from nature and tradition. Between those two views sits a complex, evolving reality. Lab-grown meat is still developing. It is expensive to produce, difficult to scale, and still finding its way into regulation, culture, and public perception. It is both a scientific achievement and an unfinished story. And flavor? Texture? Experience? That's where the differences become more nuanced. Real meat develops in response to life, motion, gravity, metabolism, time. These things influence grain, fat distribution, tenderness, and taste. Cultivated meat recreates some of these characteristics, but others require engineering or creative approaches. Some versions are closer to ground meat than whole cuts. They mirror the fundamentals, but not yet every detail. Over time, scientists refine methods to better imitate the complexity of muscle grown through movement. The goal isn't to fabricate imitation, but to shorten the biological journey. So when people ask, which one is real? The answer depends on perspective. Biologically, both come from animal cells. Experientially, only one grew as part of a living creature. One carries the marks of environment and existence. The other carries the marks of design and intention. One represents continuity. The other represents possibility. The difference between them isn't just physical. It is philosophical. It touches on how we define authenticity. Whether realness comes from origin, process, or outcome. Whether food is meaningful because of how it tastes, how it was made, or what it represents. Some people see lab-grown meat as progress, a symbol of innovation. Others see it as disruption, a step away from heritage. Both reactions reveal how much emotion sits beneath something as ordinary as what we eat. Today, the two forms of meat exist side by side. Traditional farming continues to feed the world, shaped by climate, geography, and cultural practice. Meanwhile, cultivated meat occupies research facilities, pilot plants, and experimental kitchens. It's not yet fully mainstream, and its future remains uncertain, influenced by economics, regulation, acceptance, and taste. But whether it becomes widespread or remains a niche alternative, its existence has already changed how we think about food. It forces us to confront questions we rarely ask. What part of meat matters most? Its source, its structure, or its story? If something is biologically identical but born through a different process, does it still feel the same? And how much of our attachment to food comes from science, and how much from memory? The difference between lab-grown meat and real meat isn't simply about technology versus nature. It is about two parallel journeys toward the same destination. One shaped by biology and time, the other shaped by human curiosity and engineering. Both reveal something about who we are, our ingenuity, our appetite, our ethics, and our desire to shape the world while staying connected to it. In the end, whether we stand in a farmhouse kitchen or a modern research lab, we are still asking the same question humans have asked for thousands of years. How do we nourish ourselves, and what does that nourishment say about us? Real meat carries the weight of history. Lab-grown meat carries the imprint of possibility. And between them lies a quiet, ongoing story about progress, tradition, and the evolving relationship between nature and human intention. A story still unfolding, one meal at a time.